going to start the clock, and I will notify the players that they can begin. We're ready to go. You guys can begin. Good luck. And now we will get your expert analysis. Where should everybody be betting their channel points?
Well, it's definitely an interesting matchup. So Phil's playing a very traditional Miracles build. This is like classic blue-white Miracles, which, it's nice to see this have a resurgence after, a long time of Outcomes Astrolabe and all that stuff. And Roland is playing kind of the new standby of Legacy. Like Izzet Delver has definitely gained a lot of popularity, even in the wake of Dreadhorde Arcanist being removed from the format. But losing Dreadhorde Arcanist has made this matchup substantially more difficult for the blue-red Delver side. Now, there's still a lot of play that can be had, but in Phil's seat, there's a lot of different interaction that he has that interacts extremely well with the Delver decks, and sometimes the games just play out where Miracles answers everything and Delver just can't do anything. And even in his list, in Roland's list, he only has 2 copies of True Name Nemesis, which can be a really important card, but it's more difficult to rely on in the face of Terminus too. So I think Miracles is a little bit favored here, not by a substantial margin, but definitely has an edge in the matchup.
Yeah, I find that Miracles is able to, probably better than any other deck in the format, at least off the top of my head, kind of absorb the blows of a Delver player. Okay, you want to wasteland me once or twice here and there, bolt my whatever, bolt me, bolt my creature.
Yep.
Attack me with your flip Delver on turn 2. That's all nice, but I'll be able to absorb all the damage and overwhelm you over the long term.
Definitely, and we've already seen a lot of fireworks get thrown back and forth here. Roland started on a Delver, and Phil was able to just go island, counterbalance, and they had a fight over it. And I think that's part of the difficulty that Delver has in this matchup. Roland setting himself back on mana by having to daze to protect the card earlier makes it really challenging for him to develop as cleanly as he wants in the face of an opponent that's going to be able to set up their mana pretty safely from here on in. But from Roland's perspective, he really does have to keep that counterbalance off the board, because otherwise it threatens to make a lot of his cards invalidated. So we've definitely seen, I think right now this would be advantage Phil, if only a little bit. Even though the Delver's attacking, it's not too hard for him to get a Delver off the board, and Roland's going to have to do some work in order to keep up with the card advantage that Miracles can generate.
Yeah, and if that obviously it didn't, but if that counterbalance had resolved, would it look like, Roland has such slim chances of winning this game?
It wouldn't be slim chances per se. It's just it really, really impacts the way Delver has to play the game. Of course, sometimes just all your spells just get countered by their counterbalance, and you just kind of there's not much you can do about that. But a lot of the times it really changes the way you have to sequence your spells in a pretty inefficient way. And every time you cast a spell, you're threatened with the notion that your opponent can be interacting with it. So it definitely changes the game a lot.
And specific to Roland's list here, new Strixhaven card, let me make sure I get this name right. Expressive Iteration, I believe it's called?
Yes, and that's the kind of card that definitely can help in this matchup. But in this particular circumstance, because Roland had to daze the counterbalance early, the Expressive Iteration isn't going to get to see any value until a little bit later in the game, because you can't really cast it on turn, like when you just hit your second land drop, because you're not going to get to take advantage of the card that you're exiling. So you really want to play it when you still have a land drop left, or the ability to cast some other spell off of that, which means it's a lot slower of a card advantage engine, and that's not that kind of card advantage Miracles can generally keep up with. But it is going to be an important card in the matchup, I think, in general.
And without revealing what deck you're on tonight, we'll leave everybody in suspense for that. I'm sure that people will guess, but
yeah, they might guess.
They might guess. But are you high on Expressive Iteration or Lelia, I believe the card is called, or any other Strixhaven cards for Delver players specifically, or any deck really? What's
Yeah,
your Strixhaven picks?
I haven't tried Expressive Iteration yet.
Okay.
It does look like a strong card. I'm pretty excited to try it. I mean, I was joking with Phil before the round started that me, a person who's done well with Light Up the Stage, would like Expressive Iteration because this Expressive Iteration is a substantially better variant of that card. Um, I really like what that card does. Um, Witherbloom Apprentice has been very interesting. I actually just submitted an article to Channel Fireball about Witherbloom Apprentice in Delver
Hmm.
specifically, and I think that's definitely an interesting card that we're going to see. We have yet to see the full potential of it, I think. I don't think Delver is the best home for it, but we've started to see some other archetypes adopt it really well. So it's pretty exciting to see that card. And what's the other card? Movinda. It's the white bird that makes you able to cast spells in your graveyard for free.
Right.
That if they target your own creature, that card seems very cool and infect. So I've been really happy to see that card kind of pick up here.
And shifting the conversation back to the game that we're witnessing here, we saw a Swords to Plowshares take out the Delver. In general, what is your approach for as the Delver player protecting your Delvers in that situation? Like, do you bother to fight over a swords on your Delver, or do you just say, okay, I traded a Delver for a swords and we're moving on?
So as we can see with Roland's situation, he doesn't have a second land. So that explains why he dazed early on because he wanted to kind of hide the fact that he didn't have a second land in order to protect his situation as he was able to cantrip a little bit more into the game. I think it's these days there's enough threats in Delver that you don't really need to protect your Delvers too much, but the context changes a lot depending on how your plan is going to be assessed. If Roland's hand was something like Force of Will, Double Lightning Bolt, then it becomes a lot more tempting to. Oh, okay. Yeah,
Oh,
I
Fate
don't.
Seal is happening here.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I was like, I don't know what this is. Um, it becomes
Webcam
a lot
magic.
more. It becomes a lot more tempting to protect your Delvers in that context because now your plan is to try to turn the corner as fast as possible. But in general, Volan's deck is full of threats. You know, he has four
Yep.
Sprite Dragons, he has two Young Pyromancers, two Ethereal Forgers, two True Name Nemesis. So he has plenty of threats to go around. He doesn't need to commit too many resources to defending his Delver.
Oh, the
And
spell
this
pierce is gross.
and that days was even better. This was an excellent exchange for Roland. This is probably one of the few exchanges that will let him stay in the game because if he wasn't able to get this Jace off this turn, it would have begun to look a more awkward. But now he's able to guarantee his land drop, and if he draws a lightning bolt, he can attack the Jace, kill the Jace with the lightning bolt, and now if he's drawn another land after that, he can really start to develop his board out quite well. So this is an excellent situation for him. Um, I think I. It's a little hard to tell, but I think that Mystic Sanctuary on Phil's side put a Sword Splash as on top, so
It
he
did,
knows
yeah.
that he knows the Delver isn't long for the world,
Yep.
and that's going back to your original question. That's part of the reason I don't really like defending any individual threat too highly because Mystic Sanctuary gives him a lot of access to removal spells. So
Yeah.
um,
Uh,
so
uh,
I think this if he has a lightning bolt here or a forked bolt for the Jace, this is going to be a good situation. Yeah, and I think he's in a pretty reasonable situation. He's going to be threat light because Phil does have a card. He's going to sort to Parches the Delver. But if Roland has any other follow up, he's going to be in a solid situation.
yeah, and Jace ended up getting attacked and then destroyed by the bolt. Oh, what happened here? Wait, are they
Um,
backing up for a moment? Some confusion,
okay,
possibly.
I think it's possible they moved a little bit too quickly through the Sword to Plowshares, and Roland wanted to protect the Delver of Secrets from the Sword to Plowshares. That's
Okay,
Roland.
so he did basically what we said not to do.
I think it makes sense in this situation if he doesn't
Okay.
have another land or threat to back it up. And even if he does,
Mm,
once he plays another threat, now you find yourself in a situation where you're forcing your opponent. Yeah, exactly. You're forcing your opponent to have specifically Terminus in order to do it. Ooh, but Entreat the Angels off the top is going to be even better.
yeah. All right, swinging for I think 4 here.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Roland's probably pretty light on resources at this point. So if Phil does it for X's 2, it's very unlikely. Shouldn't be any way for it to be stopped. And the Entreat's going to be very devastating this game, especially because Roland pitched the Brazen Power to the Force of Will, which would have given him a clear answer to one of the cards. But
How
it's
is?
not
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Oh no, no. But it's not over yet. If Roland can chain a couple of cantrips that resolve through the counterbalance, the Spike Dragon can actually outsize the Angels at some
It
point.
can.
So
That's true. Um, I was gonna say. Oh, what was I gonna say? Oh, Brazen Borrower and Sprite Dragon. Are those cards still as good as they were in Dreadhorde Oko Legacy?
yeah, I mean, Blazing Bower is not it's not like a very exciting card. It kind of just like answers stuff, but I think answering stuff is very reasonable here. In this metagame because there's just people are playing a lot of different cards. Like it tempos an Uro off the board for a little bit. Spike Dragon specifically good in the face of Uro because it just flies over the top, which gives you a clear plan to win. Um,
Hmm.
so yeah, I think those cards are definitely pretty reasonable here. And here it looks like Roland casts an expressive iteration, which is definitely the start he's looking for in order to stay in this. So if he's able to find a land here, maybe play Footbolt his opponent, that could be really good.
Yep. He needs a land for the Fork Bolt though. That's
Yeah,
another.
he might have just used this expressive iteration as straight up just a cantrip.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I don't think you really want to. I don't think you really want to like exile the Footbolt and then play land and play the Footbolt. You'd rather exile the land and play the land. Um, oh, but it looked like he's just going to go for the Terminus and get rid of the Angels. Interesting.
Interesting. I mean, it's not like he had the option to attack first. That would have been nice, but
Totally,
I
yeah.
think this is better for Phil in the end.
Yeah, I think I agree, but now the Roland's getting a young Pyromancer down, and this could definitely be good. But Phil's list does have 3 Mystic Sanctuaries, so he is guaranteed going to get a Terminus if he wants it. So
Yeah, yeah, that's true.
I think the card that Roland is looking for, or was looking for that previous turn, was Ethereal Forger, because it would give him the opportunity to draw the Expressive Iteration or Brainstorm again, which could be really good.
Oh,
It
true.
still would
Yeah.
have been Terminus away by the Mystic Sanctuary, but I think it gives him a little bit more, would have given him a little more optionality. But his situation's still pretty reasonable. He's going to force Phil to draw Terminus to answer this Young Pyromancer on this turn, and if the counterbalance gets a little unlucky, it could definitely be very reasonable.
Yep. He can't do it now. Okay, yeah. So he goes to 7. I think Phil's hellbent, right?
Phil's hellbent, and he's going to go down to 6 when he fetches the Scalding Tarn,
Yep.
which is definitely relevant.
Yep.
He has 4 islands in play, so this wasteland isn't going to disrupt the Mystic Sanctuary, unfortunately. But he can keep Phil off of double white in the future, which could be meaningful if he's maybe finds. I guess his list doesn't have a lot of double white cards, right? It's just the Entreat and the 3 Terminus, which is mostly 1 white in this situation.
I
So
believe so. Yeah, I believe so. Um. Oh, are they stuck again?
I think Phil's thinking about what he's going to do,
Oh,
and
okay,
he's.
okay,
It looks like he's considering taking a natural draw. That's an interesting play.
okay.
He's going to play a little bit more patiently, and because he has the 2 Mystic Sanctuaries left in his deck, he's going to have access to as many Terminuses as he wants here. And I think he's trying to play a little bit maybe around some Lightning Bolts, but it's going to get a little bit difficult from here because now he's going to have to rely on the counterbalance blindly at some point. Um, Depending on how does it get sequenced. He can still fetch a Mystic Sanctuary in response to put a Brainstorm on top, which could be really good. But we'll see how this plays out from here.
Yeah, the drawing of a land for Phil seems dicey, but it actually wasn't the worst, I guess.
Yeah, it's not bad because he can put the cantrip on top to counter a Brainstorm, but Roland's sequencing this pretty well because he's casting this Brainstorm in a turn. So if Phil wants to fetch a Sword Sparkers or Brainstorm to the top to answer the Young Pyromancer, I mean to answer the Brainstorm, he's still getting the token off of the card. He's fetching, so now he's at 3, and now he's just going to be threatened for the rest of the game by Lightning Bolt if he ever fetches. So
Yep. Yep. I guess Phil's deck doesn't really have a way to gain life back, right?
no, no.
Okay. Yeah, there's nothing in here. What do you think of the spicy Metamorphose in here?
I until I saw that card, I've never known. I didn't know what it was at all. So I am not exactly sure what to make of it. It's kind of an interesting card, but
Yep.
it seems a little bit. It seems like he's trying to answer something very specific. I'm not sure what that is, but I don't think you include that card without a clear plan.
Okay. Yeah. I'm with you. I don't really know what it's for. So
Yeah.
Okay, so another expressive iteration is on the stack.
Yeah, and just it looks like he's going to try to counter this one. So it's with Roland having two cards in hand and this young Pyromancer. Um, yeah, he's going to put a predict on top to try to counter it. Roland's situation is actually looking pretty good because the counterbalance triggers on the stack, and the Mystic Sanctuary ability resolved putting the predict on top. Roland is considering wasting the fetch land in order to get Phil to put the Terminus on top and not counter the expressive iteration.
That's pretty clever. Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, so this is a very good sequence from Roland. It's very clear that he is understanding the way this stack is going to interact, and he's forcing Phil to make some very specific actions. So I rather like what's going on here, because if Phil draws the predict, he's basically on a very slim chance of winning against this young Pyromancer. And if he draws Terminus, the expensive iteration is going to resolve. Roland, who has two cards in hand already, is going to go up to 3, maybe find a card to play off the expensive iteration, and find himself in a good situation. So.
Yep. Oh, so he's not okay. Maybe he didn't fetch then.
Yeah, it looks like that's what he's thinking. He's like, okay, do I want to draw this predict and then counter the expressive iteration, or do I want to just get the lock? No, I'm going to draw the removal spell I need for this young Pyromancer, because there's only 2 Terminus left in his deck that will answer the young Pyromancers. So it looks like, yeah, he's going to go for the predict. I think it's a risky line, but it definitely has the chance of working for him.
Yep. So, okay, so now he has the predicted hand. So what's Phil's game plan?
Phil has to predict himself or predict targeting whoever and hit a Terminus this turn. If he doesn't, he's essentially dead.
Oh, okay. So he needs a lucky draw here.
So he needs to draw something really well. He also needs to hope that Roland doesn't have any way to interact with this, or that his counterbalance works out really well for him. Okay, so he predicted it. Yep, and Tundra, and that young Pyromancer is the tokens are gonna get across the line and end the game. So
right.
I think that situation really comes down to Phil not using the Terminus on the one turn where he had the guaranteed single fetch land. He fetches at the top. He gets away the young Pyromancer. It's possible his chances might have been better just by taking a draw and hoping to hit something better. But I think young Pyromancer is one of the scariest threats in the matchup for sure, and just kind of guaranteeing that you're going to answer it on that turn, so there's nothing tricky can happen, can be pretty good.
Do you think it was better to put the Terminus on the top in the end rather than allow the Wasteland to? I mean, obviously we know, we have perfect information, but
yeah, I think in that situation right there, I would have put the Terminus on top and just accepted the expressive iteration. At the end of the day, expressive iteration is a cantrip or a draw 2, and even if he's hitting a land off it, getting a card in hand, counterbalance is implied card advantage. So if you can just get that off the board with the Terminus and hope your counterbalance is going to work, I think that's a pretty clear plan for him.
Sets?
Yeah. I went to my first pre-release in Worldwake.
Okay.
And I mean, I came back to the game because I remembered playing the game from Onslaught.
Okay.
When I was a child. So, and then I was like, oh, I remember that game being kind of fun. Let me try to get back into it. And then I got back into Worldwake. I got dived into Standard kind of hard, and then the allure of Legacy was that your cards could stay around for a while, and they didn't have to rotate. So when all of my Standard cards were about to rotate, sold a bunch of them. Jace's got banned, so I had those, and then I kind of dived into Legacy a little bit heavily.
Nice.
So,
all right. Looks like we're ready for game 2 here. A Portent started the game for Phil, and I think nothing happened for Roland. But
Yep. He hadn't done anything. The Portent, it looked like he kept it. Roland's on the Malta 6, so we'll see how his draw plans out from here. I would anticipate a threat here from him because there's not much other good reason to fetch. So.
Yeah. I guess I kind of forgot now. I guess there were no other threats coming out of Roland's sideboard, right? None.
Nope. It's just interaction, just cheap interaction. So.
Yeah, no Court of Cunnings or anything like that coming in here.
Nope, nothing like that. Spike Dragon, it's a good threat to start on because he might have forgotten to attack. I don't know exactly what that is, but Spike Dragon's a good threat to start on because you really want to play Young Pyromancer when you get a little bit of value out of it. And Spike Dragon, you just ask the question to your opponent, you have an answer, and it just kind of does its thing. So we'll see if that 1 point matters. It's pretty unlikely. It's just a single point at this stage of the game, but Phil has an excellent start. He potented, he kept it, and he was able to resolve or predict to get rid of a fetch land. So this is good. He's sitting pretty. He has a large number of cards in hand, and this is the exact situation Miracles wants to find himself in early, especially when he's not under that much pressure. Because Spike Dragon, the reason a card like Pyromancer and now rest in peace, Dreadlord Arcanist was effective against Miracles is because it forces specific answers at specific times. Has haste.
Oh boy.
But cards like Sprite Dragon and Tarmogoyf, that style of threat isn't that impactful relative to those threats because at some point the Miracles will just answer it. They'll establish that their life total is worth it, so they'll just hang out until they need to kill it, and then they kill it. So Roland, the pressure's on Roland to do a little bit more to make the Miracles have to act. That's kind of the situation you want to end up in when you're playing the Delver side of this matchup. You want to force Miracles into situations where they have to react to what you're doing. So
you want them to continue having to deal with your threats rather than develop their board, really, right? Isn't that?
Yeah, definitely. And this is an excellent exchange for Phil. He's able to set up a Sword Flashes plus Foster Storm on this Force Negation, which is removing a Brainstorm. That's a valuable card. So Roland's hand.
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh no, go ahead. Yeah.
I was just going to say this is kind of what we were talking about earlier. The obviously this isn't a Delver, but oh wow, a force on the sword.
This is a lot.
How much do you want to fight over your Miracles opponents? Again, with Mystic Sanctuary and every cantrip that we can imagine. How much do you want to fight over their removal spells? And Roland deciding here to fight over it as much as possible, basically emptying out his hand.
Wow, and he's going for a bolt. So he's going for the most aggressive possible route. Which is to me that tells me he has a relatively he has a pretty weak hand. So he definitely doesn't have another threat because if he did, he would have let the Sword Splashes resolve. And he's trying to make the most out of his lightning bolts in that situation. But it's definitely very aggressive for him to be doing what he's doing. It looks like Phil knew the top card of his library, so he's able to still draw 2 off the predict. And if he has a Sword Splashes here, it's going to be devastating for Roland at this stage.
Doesn't have the option for okay, so he gets a Volk.
I'm guessing he's going to Pyroblast then. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Yep. And this is a tough situation for Roland. He kind of went all in on the Spike Dragon. There's definitely justification for doing that. But okay, so he has a Forager to back it up. So now he's posing the question to Phil: do you have something to answer my Forager? Because Forager can do a good Dreadlord Arcanist impression for sure.
Yeah, it can. I got in some trouble recently on the stream for calling it the fail whale. I was totally joking around, but some people were a little upset that I insulted the whale.
Yeah, people are very passionate about the whale at this stage.
Yeah. I was totally joking though.
Yeah. Jace is a great answer to it. I mean, it kind of looks like a fail whale here. You have to delve 4 in order to resolve it.
All right, now you're gonna get the hate mail.
Yeah. I think Ethereal Forager is an excellent card. It's fragile, cool. So if you're playing against decks with Lightning Bolt, it can be difficult to make sure it sticks. But the impact it has in the game is a very unique card in Magic right now. Like without Dreadlord Arcanist in the format, having a threat that has to be answered or it will generate a ridiculous amount of card advantage, that's pretty unique to Delver decks right now. So I think that card is very strong, and I really like the position, but that it has. But I think Phil is starting to attain a dominant stance here. An unchecked Jace with a counterbalance, the ability to get multiple Mystic Sanctuaries as answers. Looks like Roland's going to pick up his cards. So.
All right, 2 fail whales in hand is not going to do it. I'm high on the whale though. I like the whale. Ever since they previewed the whale, I've been trying out the whale. Everybody, calm down. Chat is torn on whether or not they're for or against the whales, but.
Yeah, so that game, I mean, I think if Roland had that Ethereal Forager, it is a little bit surprising that he took such an aggressive stance because he could have just let the Sword Splashes resolve, cast a couple cantrips, and set up a situation where now he can protect his Ethereal Forager, which, based on Phil's setup, it wouldn't have really worked because Phil had multiple answers, he had cheap disruption, and he had a good a good engine to set up. But I think relying on the whale as a plant is a little bit more effective than relying on the Spike Dragon. And we see there, that's another reason why Monastery Mentor can be really good in the matchup. Sometimes the Delver players take an aggressive route where they're like, I'm going to throw my lightning bolts at you because they don't have a lot of other targets. But
Yeah.
in that situation, the Monastery Mentor would have definitely done some good work taking over the game. And if Roland didn't cast his bolt so aggressively early, that Jace that came down later wouldn't have been nearly as devastating because he would have been able to answer it on the spot. So I do like that Phil's moving towards the more traditional approach. It seems like there are some holes to that approach right now in general. If his deck is very reliant on one CMC spells, so cards like Chalice of the Void can be extremely devastating, and I think Chalice is quite a popular card at the moment. I do think it's I don't know exactly relative to the Bant Miracles list how it's positioned against Delver. It seems like both of them have their advantages and their disadvantages in that context. But it's definitely an interesting place in the metagame. You don't see a lot of the traditional approach to Miracles these days.
Yep.
Okay,
And oh yeah, go ahead.
Oh no, go ahead. I was just gonna say he's attacking with the Spike Dragon. So
Yep. Is Uro all over the place right now? Is Uro just everywhere? Where is Uro? Is he a big part of Legacy right now, or is it just kind of whatever?
I think it's fallen off in popularity a fair amount, and
Okay.
I think this is something that a fair amount of the Legacy community was discussing was a possibility, and it seems like it's played out like that. Uro, I've written about this a little bit. I've talked about it on stream.
Yep.
Uro is very powerful, but it is exploitable because there are elements of Uro that are very clearly able to be answered by certain strategies. So the Delver decks have moved away from it a lot because Rest in Peace and Blood Moon can be really devastating to rely on, and it's clunky. So you definitely see an uptick in good cards against Uro, and that kind of makes Uro a little bit less effective. It's still a very powerful card, and we're still seeing it show up a lot, and we probably will see it still. It will probably remain to show up, keep showing up a lot for basically its entire existence in the format. But it's definitely slowed down its role quite a bit.
Okay.
When people shift towards fast combo and things like that, Uro really falls off. It's a really slow card in that context. It doesn't really do anything for a long time. So
True. It is kind of a late game card. MTG Banding, thanks for the 11 months with Prime. What's up, Phil and Win? Thank you, MTG Banding. All right, so Sprite Dragon getting a little bigger here.
Yep, so Phil's Portent kept, he drew the card, Roland also kept with the Ponder, and he's not following up with a Wasteland. So that's got to be a sigh of relief from Phil because it seems like he's relying on that Tundra pretty heavily. But a Fluster Storm here to counter the Terminus, this is kind of exactly what Roland's looking for to back up the aggressive start from this Spike Dragon. I don't know exactly, because he can't Fluster Storm back. Because if he Fluster Storm is back, he can target one on all the copies, but there's still, Roland can still pay for one of the ones targeting the Terminus, and the Terminus will not resolve. So
right. Do you like protecting the Sprite Dragon here?
With the Fluster Storm, I do, definitely.
Cool.
I think it's easy enough to force your opponents to have the right answers, and especially if you have a Daze, you might be able to catch something pretty meaningful here. I don't know if Phil has another land, but I would guess he doesn't because he played the Tundra from his hand, which is generally a sign of mana weakness from the Miracles deck. They want to get their basics online as fast as possible. So I would guess that he probably doesn't have another land in hand. It's possible, but it seems like it's unlikely. And this would be a great situation if he was able to, if Roland's able to counter another removal spell or a cantrip supposedly. But I generally like keeping my interaction for the removal spells in this matchup.
And on the play as a Delver player, do you have your Dazes and your do you still have the Dazes in the deck?
Yeah, I'm gonna keep. I generally don't bring out all of them in most matchups except maybe the land matchups. So I would definitely keep some number in. And on the play, I'm probably upping that one, and I'm personally bringing out a Wasteland. I think people don't bring out Wasteland as much as I do, but I generally think it's a good strategy. But here, of course, it would have been excellent against
Yep.
an opponent missing land drop. Well, they're not missing land drops, but their mana development's very awkward. So,
Speaking of mana development being a little awkward, Phil had to drop a Mystic Sanctuary into play tapped.
yep, totally.
That's a little bit awkward. And having all non-basics is a little awkward too.
Totally. There's not too many ways to be punished for the non-basics at this point, so that's good. If he can just remove the Spike Dragon, it's going to be a really important start for Phil. And it looks like he might have a Pyroblast here, because that's one of the reasons you'd fetch. The other one is maybe he's going to get a Mystic Sanctuary and then Brainstorm Terminus at the top. Yep, that's looks. Or to put a Terminus and then Brainstorm to cast a Terminus on Roland's turn. But Roland has 5 cards in hand, so he's ready to fight.
Chances are pretty slim that Roland sideboarded in that one of Blood Moon in the sideboard, but if he did,
it would be nice here.
It would be pretty nice, yeah.
That'd be a wild situation.
It would be kind of funny.
Yeah, so one of the nice things here is that Roland can't alt cast a Force of Negation because this is on his combat step. He can hard cast it, but that might give Phil the opportunity to use a Fluster Storm pretty effectively here. So we're going to see how this plays out, but it's a very delicate situation from both players. How they proceed, this could be one of the pivotal turns. How they decide to proceed with this could impact the rest of the game.
Sure, I agree with that. And again, it comes down to how much resources Roland wants to spend on the Sprite Dragon. How all in he wants to be on the Sprite Dragon.
Exactly. I think if he has another threat, so it looks like he's thinking about countering the Brainstorm. I don't know exactly what spell he has to do that. Because he's thinking about it, it's probably not a Pyroblast, because I think you just snap that off. And I think you'd probably snap off a Force of Negation here. That might be a little bit more interesting. But I think it's possible he has another Flusterstorm in the days, based on how he's thinking about this. Because I think you'd want to counter the... No, because then you would also just counter the Terminus, because then you just Flusterstorm the Terminus. So I'm not exactly sure what Roland has here.
Yeah. Obey your thirst, protect the Sprite Dragons is HG Fox. Okay, they need a ruling. All right. Are you in Zoom?
I can join it.
Okay.
Let's see.
I'm going to join it now. What's up, guys?
Yo, so we just want to make sure, because I'm doing all these shenanigans currently in combat. We just want to make sure that we have life totals correct. If you.
Oh, I've mostly been using Roland's as a guide, but I think I've caught everything.
Okay.
Was there damage dealt this turn? Because that's the biggest question.
Other than Phil's fetch, I don't believe so, which I think we accounted for.
I took 1 on turn 2, and then 3 the following turn where you pass with 3 mana. So that's 4, and then I fetched twice, so that should be 6. So I believe I'm at 14 unless I missed the turn, which is totally possible, which is why we're asking.
Let's see. Well, so this Roland went turn 2 Spike Dragon, turn 3 Ponder, and then he Flusterstorm. So you took 2 on the second turn Spike Dragon was in play.
Right.
And then
and then 3 on the third turn.
So 3, 4, and then 2 fetches, right? And then you pass with 3, and I went on turn, and this is turn 4, so this is your turn 5.
Yeah, I think it was 1 on turn 2, 2 on turn 3, 3 on turn 4, and now this is turn 5. Yes. So I think you've taken 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 2. So you've taken 8.
Yeah. So this is correct. Great. Thank you.
It sounds right. Yep.
So no extra damage has been. This is still within combat damage.
Brainstorm is on the stack in combat. Yep.
Got it. Okay. Cool. Thank you.
Okay. Cool.
All right.
Appreciate it, guys.
All right.
Okay. Good. We sorted that out.
Yep. Are you still able to hear me?
I am. Are you still able to hear me?
Yes. Okay.
Nice.
Cool.
Cool.
Hold on one sec. Hold on. Okay. I was just making sure I was out of that call. Okay. So
yes, that explains the pause a lot, especially if Roland had a Pyroblast, because this is a very straightforward Pyroblast from my perspective. That being said, it is possible. Oh, this is an interesting play. So this Pyroblast isn't actually stopping the Spike Dragon from getting killed, because if you Pyroblast a Brainstorm, Phil can just say, that was all, I'll take my 4, untap, draw, cast Terminus. So the fact that he's spell piercing is actually kind of interesting here, because it's not actually going to count as a spell, and Roland's going to force of will. This is a really fascinating development, especially pitching a Delver Secret. This game is very interesting. Fighting because he's not actually going to keep the Sprite Dragon unless he has another force of will. Which, if he does, he's going to deal 5. So I would think he probably has another force of will. I can't imagine making this play if you don't have another force of will, because you could have just paid for the spell pierce. Yep, he has another force effect. That makes sense. And he knows that Phil's in a bit of a position of weakness here because he had to get that Terminus back on top of his deck. So he knows he doesn't have any other removal for the Spike Dragon. So this is actually quite a good setup for Roland. He's read the situation pretty well, and now he's forcing Phil into a very specific, difficult situation.
Yep, force a negation, pitching our good friend True Name to exile the Terminus, and then a counterbalance gets slammed, but I don't think Roland gives a damn about that. 6/6 Sprite Dragon.
Yeah,
Ouch.
And it looks like that's going to crack in. Wow, what a situation. Man, I think if I was in Roland's seat, I would have played it a little bit differently, but he definitely correctly sniffed out some of the key areas of weakness for Phil, and it let him set up a pretty excellent situation right there. So well played on Roland's side. But that was a tough game.